This past year alone, I've been personally affected by multiple end-of-life issues. A close elderly family member told me that he is sick and even dying. I attended the funeral of a miscarried baby named Charity. I baptized a newborn named Savannah in danger of death at the hospital's neonatal intensive care unit before her major surgery a couple days ago. Savannah's mother, named Lynn, was my high school classmate, and she died in childbirth. As a deacon, I've also helped bury several people over the past year that I have known personally. Now, you yourself may know people personally too, dealing with end-of-life issues. A grandparent, an aging relative, or a close friend, or you yourself might be facing a difficult decision about end-of-life choices. These end-of-life issues are most critical today, and today's gospel at Mass and today's readings point the way as to how we, as Christians and people of the resurrection, are to address end-of-life care. First, we will reflect on the Word of God as the source dealing with end-of-life care. Second, I will preach against and condemn the California State Legislature's immoral End-of-Life Option Act as a travesty of compassion. And third, I will proclaim basic Catholic teaching about end-of-life care. Let Holy Mother Church raise her voice once again in defense of the weak, the sick, and the dying, the voiceless, and especially the vulnerable elderly. In the first reading, when Elijah raised the body of a dead son, the doubting mother thought that Elijah came only to condemn and judge her. She said, "Why have you done this to me? Have you come to call attention to my guilt and kill my son?" When Elijah prayed that the life breath return to the body of this child, the mother saw that Elijah was simply looking out for her well-being and the son's well-being, and praised God instead. The point here is that those that serve God must protect end-of-life issues even when others think badly of themselves and think badly of their motives. When Jesus in today's gospel stepped forward and touched the coffin, he told the dead boy, "Arise." For us today, we may not have the power to physically raise the dead to life, but you and I, have the power to spiritually raise the culture of death from the pit. As the responsorial psalm said, "O Lord, you preserve me from among those going down into the pit." And like an injured animal licking its wounds that you are trying to help, and that animal might misconstrue your intentions and actions and run away and even attack you, so too the church, which is trying to raise up those that are spiritually dead and dying in their sins. You might ask, can the church really make statements about the state's laws? Well, not only can the church make those statements, but we, the church, must proclaim the good news of the civilization of love and life. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give to God what belongs to God. End-of-life care belongs to God. We Christians will gladly give to society and the state that is Caesar and obey just laws. But the church doesn't just have the right, but the church has the duty, you and I, to speak out on moral issues in the public forum. Just as Jesus and Elijah were present at the end of life issues in their day, so too we must be present in our end-of-life issues today. On June 9, 2006, California will enter a new era of the culture of death with the first ever legal implementation of euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide. Now, do you know what a euphemism is? A euphemism is a word that sounds good, but it really isn't good, like death with dignity, whatever that means. The so-called End-of-Life Option Act makes it sound like one has good healthcare choices, but it's not good because it will bring death on a massive scale, and I think about the poor elderly that this will affect the most. Let's cut through the smokescreen. This law negatively affects especially the elderly that are sick and dying. The new law will allow doctors to prescribe drugs with the express purpose of aiding someone to kill themselves and commit suicide. Think of Robin Williams' suicide. Robin Williams, who was depressed under this new law, would have been given a lethal dose of pills if he wanted to kill himself. That is physician-assisted suicide. The Netherlands, or Holland, where this began, where it was very legal for many years, is where California is wrongfully heading today. What began as just few extraordinary cases has now become routine, where 130,000 people in Holland die every year. And here's the worst part. Up to 20,000 are killed or helped by their doctors directly, and over half of them didn't ask to die. We went from it being optional to now it being mandatory and against the choice of the elderly. And think about this. Healthcare coverage, which is already expensive, will now have a new economic motive to send people to their deaths with inexpensive suicide. And people that are suicidal are depressed and have mood swings. They should be given help and given care, not just killed, to take care of their depression and anxiety. So during this Jubilee Year of Mercy, dear brothers and sisters, we should show our compassion and, like the gospel, rather raise up those that are in the pit of depression and suicidal and breathe life into them. When patients suffering from terminal illness are given proper care, they're given attention, their desire for assisted suicide actually disappears gradually. Palliative care means helping others manage pain. We should redouble our efforts instead to promote palliative care for those in need. Do you have family and friends in this situation? You too can live out today's gospel simply by being present to them. Perhaps now is the time to make that phone call to someone you've been meaning to call and breathe life into their weary spirits. Who can you help to spiritually raise from the dead? Say to them like Jesus, "Arise, you do not need to kill yourself. You are loved." And third, this leads to my third and final point, Catholic teaching on end-of-life care. Each human life from natural beginning to natural end is a gift of God. Eric, the father of the baby I baptized in the hospital, who lost his wife Lynn during childbirth, said to me, "Why do we need to wait for a crisis to realize that life is a gift?" Your life is precious, a precious gift that should not be intentionally and deliberately terminated just because things seem inconvenient. Those whose lives are diminished or weakened, the sick and handicapped, deserve special respect. One critical distinction will help guide end-of-life care. There is a difference between ordinary care and extraordinary care. I repeat, there's a difference between ordinary care and extraordinary care. We are morally bound to provide ordinary care. Even if death is near, ordinary health care is owed in justice to the sick person and cannot be legitimately interrupted. Ordinary care are things like food, water, air, basic aspirin, basic medical things for simple things like even artificial tubes or needles or Band-Aids, or human things like warmth and touch to sustain life. Using painkillers like morphine, for example, to alleviate chronic pain and suffering, even at the risk of shortening one's life, can be morally acceptable as long as death is not intended. So that's ordinary care. Extraordinary care, on the other hand, are those medical procedures that are extremely burdensome or dangerous or disproportionate to the outcome. Discontinuing extraordinary care can be morally legitimate when the patient makes the decision, as in the case of removing extraordinary life-saving machines and letting nature take its course. The Terry Schiavo case, where a woman was deprived of basic food and starved to death in Florida, is a good example here. According to U.S. Bishop Robert Vasha, before she was murdered, quote, "The Catholic Church teaches that hydration and nutrition are simply water and food. These must always be provided as long as the food or water itself or the method of delivery is not unduly burdensome to the patient. There does not appear to be any indication from Terry Schiavo that the provision or method of provision of food and water is burdensome to her. It would be murder to cause her death by denying her the food she still has the ability to digest and which continues to provide for her definite benefit, life itself," end quote. So this distinction between ordinary care and extraordinary care will help us make decisions from a Christian perspective. And in harder cases, you can contact your local diocese for help. So in summary, just as Jesus physically raised the dead to life, we too can help people today to be spiritually raised from the pit of despair and suicide. And second, give to Caesar and the state what belongs to Caesar and the state, and give to God what belongs to God. Human life and end-of-life care belong to God, not the state. And third, the distinction between ordinary care and extraordinary care will help us make Christian decisions about our own health care or about those people that we love. Let us, the members of the church, have Jesus use us to spiritually raise up those in the pit, so that, like in today's responsorial psalm, those spiritually dead that we resurrect may rise to new life and sing together with us for all eternity, "I will praise you, Lord, for you have rescued me." Let the church rise.